and how to use this technique effectively to improve your English skills.
Whether you're struggling with vocabulary, pronunciation, or just want to expose yourself to more English, this method can be a great way to boost your learning effortlessly.
That's right. But before we dive in, if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and follow us for more English learning tips.
All right, so let's get started and talk about the science behind learning while sleeping. How does it actually work? Let's find out. So, Julia, let's get into the science behind this. Can we really learn English while we're sleeping?
Great question, Jason. The short answer is yes, but not in the way most people think. You won't wake up fluent in English overnight, but your brain does continue to process information while you sleep.
That's fascinating. So, what exactly happens in our brains when we sleep?
Well, when we sleep, our brain goes through different sleep cycles, including deep sleep and REM sleep. During these stages, the brain organizes and strengthens memories. This process is called memory consolidation. It helps store new information and makes learning more effective.
Oh, so that means if we've been studying English during the day, our brain continues working on it while we sleep?
Exactly. Scientists have found that when people hear words, phrases, or even music during sleep, their brains react to them. This means that if you listen to English conversations, vocabulary, or phrases while sleeping, your brain may reinforce what you've already learned.
That's incredible. Are there any studies that prove this?
Yes! There was an interesting study conducted by Swiss researchers. They had two groups of people study a foreign language. One group listened to the words while sleeping, and the other didn't. Guess what? The group that listened to the words during sleep remembered them better the next day.
Wow, that's amazing. So, this proves that our brains can absorb information passively while we sleep.
Exactly. But there's one important thing to remember. Sleep learning works best as a supplement to active learning. You still need to practice speaking, writing, and listening during the day.
That makes sense. So, if someone wants to use this technique, what's the best way to do it?
Great question. That's what we'll talk about next. How to use this method effectively for English learning.
All right. Now that we understand the science behind learning while sleeping, let's talk about how to actually use this method for English learning. Julia, what's the first step?
The first step is choosing the right type of content. Not all English audio is good for sleep learning. You want something clear, slow, and repetitive so your brain can process it easily.
That makes sense. So, what are some good examples?
Good options include basic English conversations, dialogues between native speakers. Common English phrases and vocabulary repeated words help memory. Sleep-friendly podcasts or audiobooks with slow, clear pronunciation. Positive affirmations in English for confidence building.
I love that. So instead of playing a random English movie, it's better to listen to structured and simple content, right?
Exactly. Movies or fast conversations can be too complicated, and your brain might struggle to process them while sleeping.
Got it. Now, after choosing the right content, what's the next step?
The second step is setting up your environment properly. You need to 1. Keep the volume low. It should be soft and relaxing, not distracting. 2. Use a sleep timer, so the audio doesn't play all night. 3. Choose the right device. A small speaker or comfortable headphones work best.
That's great advice. So, instead of blasting English lessons all night, it's better to play them softly and for a limited time.
Exactly. Your brain can still pick up information even at a low volume.
Okay, so let's say someone does this every night. How can they know if it's working?
Great question. The best way to check your progress is to test yourself the next day. For example, repeat the words you heard and see if you remember them. Write down key phrases from the audio. Try using them in a sentence during the day.
That's a smart approach. So, by reviewing what you heard during sleep, you reinforce what you've learned.
Exactly. The key is combining sleep learning with active practice. If you do both, you'll notice real improvement over time.
Awesome! Now that we know how to use this method, let's talk about what kind of content works best for sleep learning. Stay with us. Now that we know how to set up sleep learning, let's talk about the most important part: what to actually listen to while sleeping. Julia, what are the best types of content for this?
Great question, Jason. Not all audio is effective for sleep learning. You need content that is clear, slow-paced, and repetitive so your brain can absorb it naturally. Here are some of the best options. 1. English conversations. Listening to simple, everyday conversations helps with natural sentence structure and pronunciation. 2. Common phrases and vocabulary. Repeated exposure to basic words and phrases strengthens memory. 3. Slow audiobooks or storytelling. Simple English stories with clear narration are great for listening practice. 4th, guided sleep learning audios. Specially designed audios that repeat words and phrases gently. 5. Positive affirmations in English. Encouraging statements like "I am confident in English" can help with motivation and mindset.
That's a great list. I love the idea of listening to real conversations because it helps learners understand how English is spoken naturally.
Exactly. And when you hear the same phrases repeatedly, your brain starts recognizing them automatically.
That makes sense. But what about background noise? Some people listen to music or white noise when they sleep. Does that help?
Yes, soft background music or white noise can actually make sleep learning more effective because it helps you relax. Some sleep learning audios even combine English words with gentle nature sounds to improve focus.
That sounds perfect. But what about podcasts like this one? Can listening to English podcasts while sleeping help?
Yes, but with one rule: the podcast should be slow and clear. Some podcasts have fast conversations which might be too difficult to process during sleep. It's better to listen to podcasts designed for learners like this one, or ones with simple storytelling.
That's a great tip. So, to sum up, the best things to listen to while sleeping are slow conversations, vocabulary audios, audiobooks, and gentle affirmations, with soft background sounds if needed.
Exactly. Now, if you're wondering how to get the best results from sleep learning, stay with us because next, we'll share the best practices to maximize your learning.
All right. Now that we know what to listen to while sleeping, let's talk about how to get the best results from this technique. Julia, what are some best practices for maximizing learning while sleeping?
Great question, Jason. If you want to make sleep learning truly effective, you need to follow a few key steps. Here are some of the best practices. 1. Listen to familiar content. Your brain learns best when it reinforces information you already know. Don't listen to completely new material. Review words and phrases you've studied before.
That's interesting. So, if I'm learning new vocabulary, I should study it during the day and then listen to it at night?
Exactly. This technique is called re-exposure, and it helps move information from short-term to long-term memory. 2. Keep the audio clear and slow. Avoid fast conversations or complex topics. Choose recordings where speakers talk slowly and clearly. Repetition is key. The more you hear it, the better you remember it.
That makes sense. If the speech is too fast, it might be harder for the brain to process during sleep. 3. Use a sleep timer. Instead of playing audio all night, set a sleep timer for about 1 to 2 hours. This helps prevent disruptions to your deep sleep cycle. Oh, that's a smart tip. Some people think they need to listen all night, but that might not be the best approach. 4. Combine sleep learning with active practice. Sleep learning works best when combined with speaking, writing, and listening practice during the day. Try repeating words and phrases the next morning to strengthen memory.
Exactly. If you listen at night but never practice during the day, you won't improve much. You need both. 5. Stay consistent. Sleep learning isn't magic. It takes time. Try listening to English every night for a few weeks and see how much you improve.
That's great advice. So, to sum it up, the best practices for sleep learning are: 1. Listen to content you've already studied. 2. Choose slow and clear audio. 3. Use a sleep timer. 4. Combine sleep learning with active practice. 5. Stay consistent.
Yes, if you follow these steps, you'll see real improvements in your English over time.
Amazing! Now that we've covered best practices, let's move on to our next topic: common mistakes to avoid when using sleep learning. Stay with us. We've talked about the science, the best methods, and even common mistakes to avoid. But now, let's hear some real-life success stories. Julia, do you know anyone who has successfully used sleep learning to improve their English?
Yes, Jason. One great example is Emma, a university student from Spain. She struggled with English pronunciation, but she started listening to simple English conversations every night. After just 2 months, she noticed she could understand and repeat phrases more easily.
That's amazing. It really shows how consistent listening can help with fluency.
Exactly. Another story is David from Japan. He wanted to improve his vocabulary but had a busy schedule. So he started listening to English word lists with example sentences while sleeping. Over time, he found that words felt more familiar, and he could recall them faster in conversations.
That's inspiring. It proves that sleep learning isn't just a theory. It actually works if you use it the right way.
Yes, and many people have seen results, but the key is combining sleep learning with active practice during the day.
Absolutely. So, if you're listening to this podcast and wondering if sleep learning works, these real-life success stories show that it does.
Exactly. And coming up next, we'll answer an important question. Can you become fluent just by listening while sleeping? Stay with us.
Wow, we've covered a lot today, from the science of sleep learning to the best practices and even real-life success stories. Let's quickly summarize the key takeaways.
Great idea. Here's what we learned today. Sleep learning works, but it's most effective when combined with active practice. Choose the right content, slow, clear, and repetitive English audio. Use a sleep timer so the audio doesn't disrupt your deep sleep. Review what you learned the next morning to reinforce memory. Stay consistent. Practice this method for several weeks to see real results.
Yes, and remember, sleep learning won't make you fluent overnight, but it's a powerful tool to support your English learning journey.
Exactly. So if you want to improve your English while sleeping, start tonight, pick a simple English conversation, set a sleep timer, and make it a habit.
That's a great challenge. And if you found this episode helpful, don't forget to subscribe and share it with other English learners.
Yes, keep practicing, keep listening, and we'll see you in the next episode. Happy learning.
Before we wrap up today's episode, we want to remind you to take action. Start using the sleep learning method tonight and see how much it can improve your English.
And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. If you enjoyed today's content, leave us a review. We'd love to hear how sleep learning is working for you.
Also, check out the show notes for links to recommended resources, including sleep-friendly English audiobooks and podcasts.
Thank you for joining us today. Remember, consistency is key, and with a little effort every night, you'll notice big improvements in your English.
Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and we'll see you in the next episode. Memorizing words doesn't have to be hard or boring. There are smarter, easier ways to make new vocabulary stick. And in today's episode, we'll be sharing some of the best strategies to help you remember new words faster and use them confidently in your daily life.
Exactly, Jason. By the end of this episode, you'll know why most people forget words quickly, how to avoid common mistakes, and, most importantly, how to make learning new words both fun and effective. So grab a notebook or just listen along and let's get started.
All right, let's dive into the challenges of memorizing new words. Julia, have you noticed how many learners feel frustrated because they can't remember words they studied just days ago?
Absolutely, Jason. It's such a common issue. One of the biggest challenges is that people often try to memorize long lists of words without any context. It's like trying to memorize random numbers. It doesn't stick because there's no connection or meaning attached.
Exactly. And I think another big problem is that learners sometimes overload themselves. They try to learn 50 or even 100 words in a single day, thinking they'll magically remember them all. But the brain just doesn't work like that, does it?
Not at all. Cramming might help you for a short-term test, but when it comes to long-term memory, it doesn't work. Plus, it can be overwhelming and discouraging when you realize you've forgotten most of the words a week later.
Right. Another challenge I've seen is a lack of repetition. Many learners don't revisit the words they've learned. They study them once and expect them to stay in their memory forever. But the truth is, without regular review, those words will fade away.
Exactly, Jason. It's like planting a seed. You can't just water it once and expect it to grow into a tree. You need consistent care and attention. Another issue is that learners often don't use the words they're trying to learn. If you don't actively use a word in speaking or writing, it's much harder for your brain to retain it.
That's a great point, Julia. And I think one more challenge is that some learners rely too much on their first language when studying. For example, they translate every word into their native language instead of thinking in English. While translation can be helpful at the beginning, it can also slow down the process of truly understanding and using the word naturally.
Yes, relying on translation can create a barrier. Instead, it's much better to associate the word directly with its meaning or an image, which we'll talk more about later. So, to summarize, the main challenges are lack of context, trying to learn too many words at once, not reviewing or using the words, and over-relying on translation. But don't worry, we have solutions for all of these.
Exactly. Now that we've identified the challenges, it's time to talk about strategies to overcome them. Let's explore how you can memorize new words, smartly, and make them part of your everyday English. Now that we've discussed the common struggles with memorizing words, let's talk about smart strategies that can help you memorize new vocabulary effectively and make it stick. Julia, what's the first strategy you'd recommend for learners?
One of the best ways to memorize new words is through contextual learning. Instead of memorizing words in isolation, try to learn them in sentences or stories. When you understand how a word is used in different contexts, it's much easier to remember and use it yourself.
Great point. So, let's say you're learning the word elaborate, which means to explain something in detail. Rather than just memorizing the definition, you could learn a sentence like, "Can you elaborate on that idea?" Or, "She elaborated on her plans for the weekend." By seeing the word in different situations, it becomes more meaningful, right?
Exactly, Jason. And it's not just about learning the word in a single sentence. The more examples you see and use, the better. You could create your own sentences or even use stories or articles to see how the word is applied in different contexts.
Yes, and another technique that works really well is visualization and association. This is where you create a mental image that connects the new word to something familiar. For example, if you're learning the word mountain, you might picture a huge, snow-capped mountain in your mind. The image helps reinforce the meaning.
Right, and sometimes using familiar objects or experiences to associate a word with can make it even more personal. Let's say you're learning the word smooth. You could think about the smooth surface of your phone screen or the feeling of silk. That personal connection helps you remember the word more effectively.
That's a great tip, Julia. Visualization can make words feel real and tangible, which makes them easier to recall. Now, let's move on to one of the most powerful strategies: spaced repetition. Have you ever heard of this, Julia?
Absolutely. Spaced repetition is based on the idea that you should review words at increasing intervals. So instead of studying a word every day for a week, you'd review it after a day, then 3 days, then a week, and so on. This method helps to keep the word fresh in your memory over a longer period.
Right? And this technique is supported by a lot of research on memory. Our brains tend to forget things quickly unless we reinforce them. Using apps like Anki or Quizlet, which are designed to help with spaced repetition, can make this process much easier and more organized.
And it doesn't have to be just flashcards. You can create your own spaced repetition schedule. For example, you could write down new words and review them every few days until they stick. This way, you're reinforcing your memory without cramming all at once.
Exactly, Julia. And let's not forget about using the words in real-life situations. One of the best ways to really memorize a word is to actually use it in conversation or writing. Even if you don't have a partner to practice with, you can talk to yourself in English, describe things around you, or even write a short story using the words you've learned.
Speaking of practicing alone, I highly recommend setting up a practice routine where you try to use the new words daily. For example, you could try to make at least one sentence with a new word every day. The more you use it, the more natural it will feel.
Exactly. And remember, even if you make mistakes while using the word, it's part of the learning process. The key is consistency. Keep trying to use the word, and eventually it will become a part of your active vocabulary.
And don't forget, there's a fun way to reinforce new vocabulary through flashcards and gamification. You can turn your vocabulary practice into a game by using apps that allow you to test yourself or even make your own flashcards with pictures or example sentences. This makes learning feel more like play, and we all know that makes it more enjoyable.
Flashcards are great, especially if you make them with some creativity. Maybe by adding a personal touch, like a funny drawing or a memorable sentence. The more fun and interactive you make it, the better.
And for those who love visual aids, another way to help your memory is through mnemonics. a memory technique where you create a funny or memorable story to link the word to its meaning. For example, if you're learning the word gargantuan, meaning huge, you could imagine a giant gargoyle that's as big as a mountain.
That's a fantastic example, Julia. Mnemonics work because they're often so absurd or funny that they stick in your mind more easily. It's a great tool for remembering tricky words.
Finally, watching and listening to English content, like podcasts, movies, and songs, can also help you remember words. When you hear new words in context, it reinforces your memory, and because you're listening to them naturally, it's easier to remember them.
Absolutely. So, to recap, the smartest ways to memorize words are through 1. Contextual learning, using words in sentences or stories. 2. Visualization and association, linking words to images or familiar things. 3. Spaced repetition, reviewing words at increasing intervals. 4. Using words daily in speaking or writing. 5. Flashcards and gamification, making learning fun. 6. Mnemonics, creating funny or memorable stories. 7. Watching and listening to English media, reinforcing words in context.
These strategies can make learning vocabulary smarter, not harder. Remember, it's all about finding what works best for you and sticking with it. And trust me, the more consistent you are, the better your results will be.
Now that we've covered some solid strategies to memorize words, let's talk about the fun side of learning vocabulary. Because, let's face it, learning English doesn't have to be boring, right?
Absolutely, Jason. Making vocabulary learning fun is key to keeping yourself motivated and engaged. One of my favorite fun techniques is word association games. You can play a game where you think of a new word and try to associate it with as many different things as possible.
Oh, I love that. For example, if the word is sparkling, you could associate it with things like fireworks, a shiny necklace, or even a cool glass of soda. The more connections you make, the easier it will be to remember the word.
Exactly. And you can do this on your own, or even with a friend. It turns learning into a game. Another fun way to remember words is through storytelling. Create little stories using the new words you've learned. The sillier, the better.
Totally. The more creative you get with your stories, the more likely you are to remember the words. For example, if you're learning the word anodus, you could make up a story about an enormous pizza that's so big it needs its own zip code.
Haha, I love that. The funnier the story, the more likely your brain will latch onto it. Another playful technique is vocabulary scavenger hunts. You can challenge yourself to find new words in books, movies, or even outside in the world. For instance, if you're watching a movie, try to write down 5 new words that you hear and use them in your own sentences later.
That's a fun one, especially because it adds a bit of adventure to the learning process. And speaking of movies and shows, karaoke is a surprisingly fun method for learning new words. You can pick a song in English, learn the lyrics, and pay attention to new vocabulary. Singing along helps with pronunciation and also reinforces the words in your memory.
That's such a great idea, Jason. Music has a way of sticking in our minds, so why not use it to your advantage? Another fun method is role-playing. Find a friend, or even practice on your own, and pretend to be in different situations where you can use the new vocabulary. For example, pretend you're ordering food at a restaurant and practice words related to food, or act out a shopping trip and use new shopping-related words.
Role-playing is a fantastic way to practice speaking in a low-pressure environment. It gives you a chance to use new words naturally, which is one of the best ways to make them stick. And if you're practicing alone, you can still do it in front of a mirror. Pretend you're having a conversation and use as many new words as possible.
That's a fun way to practice without worrying about making mistakes. And if you like a challenge, you can even make your own word quizzes. Set up a little quiz for yourself where you write down definitions or use the words in sentences and then try to guess which word matches each definition. You could do this once a week and test your progress.
That's a great way to track your growth while keeping it fun. Plus, when you get the answers right, it gives you that sense of achievement that motivates you to keep learning.
Exactly. And another fun way to reinforce vocabulary is through comics or cartoons. If you like drawing, create a comic strip using the new words. Or if you're not an artist, you can find online comics in English. The visual context helps reinforce the meaning of the words while keeping it lighthearted and enjoyable.
Wow, these are some amazing fun techniques. To summarize, here are the playful methods that can help you retain vocabulary. 1. Word association games, linking words to as many things as possible. 2. Storytelling. Create funny, memorable stories using new words. 3. Vocabulary scavenger hunts. Find new words in movies or the world around you. 4. Karaoke. Sing along to songs to learn new words and improve pronunciation. 5. Role-playing. Act out situations using new vocabulary. 6. Word quizzes. Test yourself to track progress and stay motivated. 7. Comics or cartoons. Draw or read comics to reinforce new vocabulary with visuals.
I hope these fun techniques make vocabulary learning more exciting for you. Remember, the more enjoyable and interactive the process is, the more likely you are to stick with it. And the more you practice, the easier it becomes to remember those words.
Exactly, Julia. Learning doesn't have to be stressful. Make it a game, make it fun, and the vocabulary will stick. Now, let's move on to some common mistakes learners make when memorizing words. These are important to avoid to make sure you're on the right track. Now that we've explored fun ways to learn and remember vocabulary,